welcome everybody. This is the virtual open day. It's not as in person, but we'll try our best to make it as in person as possible. So today I am an academic at Brunel, and I am a lecturer at the Division of Psychology. And today I'm going to introduce you to our excellent BSc program in psychology and psychology, sport and exercise and health as well. So I hope you enjoy the presentation, and I'm not sure whether, John, you're going to click through the slides or I am. You are. Okay. So if you go on, right. So all programs in the UK, all psychology programs in the UK have to be accredited by the British Psychological Society in order to, for you to become a psychologist. And obviously Brunel is a British Psychological Society accredited course. So this is like a national curriculum similar to what you're used to for your GCSEs A levels. So what the British Psychological Society tells us to do is that within our program, we must cover certain areas. So students must acquire specific knowledge about psychology in order to be a psychologist and to be registered with the British Psychological Society. So the areas that the BPS requires students to gain knowledge on fall within these areas that I'm showing in the slide. So cognitive psychology, social, biological psychology, developmental psychology, individual differences, and research methods. So those are the areas that we must cover, and these are all covered at Brunel in order to be accredited by the British Psychological Society. If John, you can go on. Right, so psychology BSc honors. So for if you are interested, as I said, we are accredited by the British Psychological Society, but I want to say a few words about psychology, what it is, and, is it the right course for you? So if you are interested in understanding how individuals behave in their environment, like on a sort of broader scale, then you're interested in psychology. That's very general concepts. But for example, if you're interested, psychologists study all sorts of things, but they're interested in how individuals think, reason, react to the environment around them. For example, we interested on how other individuals in the environment, our social environment, influences our actions. For example, we're interested in the biological basis of behavior, how the brain works in certain circumstances and guides our behavior. Or, for example, how cognitive abilities such as attention, memory develop from childhood into adulthood, for example. Why people behave differently in a similar situation. They have different decision-making processes that guide their behavior. So if you're interested and excited about these themes, then the psychology BSc program at Brunel is your program. You will be choosing the right one. So the program runs full-time for 3 years with either a additional 1-year placement that could be done as a whole 1 year, or could be split into 2 6-month parts. In year 1 and year 2, generally what it's covered is those curriculum areas that we need to cover to be accredited. That includes foundation of psychology, learning and social psychology, and foundation of psychology, brain and cognition, and so on. In year 2, you will go on to biological psychology, cognitive psychology. In year 3, which actually is the year I teach, you will sort of try and see what you like and try to specialize, and you can choose amongst a variety of modules that suit your interest best, and depending on where you want to go on to also next with your career. For example, we have a variety of those modules, such as animal behavior, cognitive neuroscience of consciousness, disorders of perception, movement control, drug hormones in the brain. I teach forensic psychology, for example. So you have a big variety, and that's for the third year. If you can move on, John, to the next. So also Brunel offers a a BSc in psychology, sports, health, and exercise, and that's jointly delivered by the Division of Psychology and the Sports, Health, and Exercise Sciences, and that's also accredited by the British Psychological Society. This course is more for people who are interested in the link between exercise, sports, and how the brain, for example, works during certain activities, for example, or how physical activity and the brain interact, or other, mind and body related topics. And this again can be taken as a full time over 3 years, and also offers the opportunity to have a placement year within the program, such as you can have different options. You can have 2-part summer holiday placement or a 1-year placement. And again, year 1 and year 2 will cover all those areas we talked about that are prescriptive in a way by the British Psychological Society. And then year 3 would be more like giving you the opportunity to go deeper into the topics of sports psychology, basically, to specialize in this area. If you could go on to the next, John. So we have talked about placement earlier on in the slides, and that's a very important part of this program. And I want to spend a few more words on this. So many students in our course choose to do a placement. Roughly about 25% of students choose to do a placement. This means that they're taking a 4-year. The course is taking 4 years rather than 3 years. However, if you enroll in a placement, then you will get help in getting placement positions within a variety of different sectors. And you will then have that experience in your bag, meaning that when, for example, I give an example, most psychology students want to go on and have a career and start a career as a clinical psych or within clinical psychology. That's a very competitive career to go in terms of, training for it, but also job-wise. So, for example, when graduates finish their undergraduate degree, they graduate in psychology, they will be up for, if they want to go into clinical, apply for assistant psychologist post, which are really, really competitive. And sometimes for one position, you have hundreds of applications. So having a placement, for example, a couple of placements during your degree in settings where you actually learn clinical skills and you see how a psychologist works in their everyday life, the clinical work, that will push you forward when you're applying after your degree for those positions. And to go on to a clinical doctorate at the moment is quite competitive. And a requirement to apply for a clinical doctorate is to have a couple of assistant psychologist positions before you have a chance to actually get a position as a trainee in clinical psychology. So that's really important, but not only for clinical psychology. It's important to have professional experience within any sector that you want to go on to later on in your career. So the placement, there's an example in the slide, can be taken, and that's unique to Brunel, that offers a sandwich placement, like a thin placement, whereby you can have 6 months in one institution in one area of psychology and 6 months in another area of psychology. For example, you may want to have one research placement on doing research, for example, being involved in empirical research within the department, and another and another placement doing clinical work, for example. You can take the whole year out and do a placement. Yes, John, if you can go on. Thank you. To the next slide. So similarly for the BSc Sport, Health and Exercise, BSc, it's a similar story. So you can take either a one-year placement or 2 summer placements. Again, if you go, I'm aware of the time, so I'm trying to go through all the slides and don't leave anything out in terms of information. So I was talking about placements and how they can advantage you, like can be an advantage for you guys. But also I want to talk about all our connections. We have a variety of places we can put you in touch with and send you to have your placement. And I want to spend, I would like to spend more time on this, but I would just focus on, you know, that's the areas. So within clinical psychologists, we've got a couple of very good links. We have research in psychology that's within Brunel, but also we collaborate with a number of other institutions that are listed there. So you can go there to do research in those places. Also, community-based programs that you can get on and do your placement are, for example, charities like Catch 22, which provide lots of services for young people, for example, reduction of violence in the society, or they provide work for families, young people with mental health problems. So it's really, we have a lot of contacts. You may be doing your placement in schools, special needs schools, HR departments, prison services. It's really, really varied. If you go on, John, to the next one. And again, the placement is linked to the careers. So the career in psychology is quite, again, varies a lot. So with the degree in psychology, you are, you know, in a placement, for example, you will be attractive to employers on a wide variety of sectors, such as media, marketing, HR, law enforcement, finance, government, different sectors of the government, health, education. So it's really, really quite transferable as a degree, and could be opening loads of doors. Yes, if you go on. Right, so it's also, we've got a slide to show you also that if you were wondering what's the typical week of an undergraduate student at Brunel is, we thought we'll give you a little snapshot of what that could be. Brunel, I must say, the campus is amazing, and it's really providing lots of opportunities for social and recreational activity. And obviously, as well as in the timetable, as you can see there, there's loads of studying there. So independent study, as well as lectures, seminars, and all academic sort of commitments that you have to have as a student. However, you can see there that in the evening you could, you know, joining lots of society. There's art club, going out with friends, or, you know, joining a society of your interest, or do sports, for example. So it's really varied, and it offers a lot. In the current times, obviously, we have to follow all the procedures that we are used to for the pandemic, but hopefully in the future things will go back to normal and students can go back to all those activities as well as their academic life. So if you go on to the next. We have quite very good feedback from students on our program. Specifically, they really tell us that the program has enriched them in a variety of ways. And again, going back to, you know, for example, placement, what a student was reporting is, this gave me the opportunity to understand what I want to do in the future, and also what I don't want to do in the future, because you may do a placement and understand that that's not your thing, and you may change. But also, this will put you in a significantly improve your career prospects, as well, as I've explained earlier. If you go on to the next. So the next one is about the facilities that we have at psychology, within the Division of Psychology. I must say, the Division of Psychology has got access to literally each and every equipment that you can think of in a psychology department. We've got MRI scanner, 3D 3 Tesla MRI scanner availability for research. We've got a number of EEG labs. We've got a portable near-infrared spectroscopy. We've got transcranial magnetic stimulation. We've got labs where you can do psychophysics experiments, eye tracking, virtual reality. We really got everything. And the other thing is, like, we've got a massive cognitive neuroscience group that I'm going to present in the next slide, in another slide, that actually is full of experts who are using the equipment for their really cutting edge research that you can get actually engaged with, especially for your empirical projects in your third year, because you will be doing empirical research in your third year as part of the degree. So you can get to actually do an MRI study, or as well as, you know, an EEG study or psychophysics study. It's really well equipped and the expertise is there. If you're interested more about the application of those experiments, some of those experiments, or, you know, some examples of those experiments, you can go onto YouTube and you could watch some videos that we've got there about, for example, how we classify emotional phases and we process emotional phases. Or, for example, there is an experiment about the phantom limb and how that helps us understand, like, what's the application of experiments like that in the clinical settings, for example. So that's very useful if you're interested. Okay, so the academic expertise is massive within the department. We've got groups that are specialized in cross-cultural social psychology, evolutionary psychology, child psychology, psychoanalysis, psychopharmacology. And as I was telling you, if you, John, go to the next slide, we've also got a massive group of cognitive and clinical neuroscience, whereby, again, these people are active researchers, active academics, and therefore in their teaching is research informed, it's research led. You will learn about the latest findings in the field just brought in the classroom, basically, and available to you to actually learn. So that's what I wanted to highlight. Any questions?
Right, thank you very much, Ignacio. That was very detailed. So we got some quick fire questions we'll go through. So the first one, I think I can probably answer this for you, but what are the entry requirements for a placement year?
The entry requirements for a placement
It would be the
year.
same as a subject, really, wouldn't it, I imagine?
Yes. It would.
So if you basically get accepted onto a psychology BSc or a sport health and exercise BSc with psychology, that means you got the option, which is up to you, whether you want to take the placement or not. Okay.
Yeah, I had actually an earlier question on the Unibuddy that is pertinent to this, and basically somebody was asking, what's the best time? When is the best time to apply for the placement? And also Jane replied to that, saying that the best time is right away when you apply for finance, sort of in a way, in terms of how the finance is organized when you apply for the degree. However, you can change your mind afterwards and, you know, go back to the 3 years course if you changed your mind, for example. But it's best to apply at the very beginning. And yeah, the requirements are the same as the requirements to joining the project, you know, to get offered the place.
Thanks, Ignacio. So which do you think is more beneficial, the 2 6-month placements or the single 1-year placement?
Well, that's a good question. I think it depends on the student, whether, you know, they've got a clear mind about what they want to learn as a professional sort of experience. So if you're clear that you want to do clinical psychology in a specific setting, for example, working with children, then I'd suggest, you know, to do the long one. So being a year in an institution and actually do the work and experience how it is to work in an institution that does that job. But if you're not as clear and you're more explorative, you don't really know, the 2 6 months placements give you the opportunity to actually get a bit of things. So for example, in my case, when I was an undergrad, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So for example, I was interested in research, but I also was interested in clinical stuff. So in the end, I ended up doing clinical research. I'm a lecturer and I'm a researcher. So I'm both. But for example, in that situation, if I had the opportunity, which I didn't have back in Italy, I could have done a 6 months placement in research, doing research within the department, a 6 months placement going into a hospital and do, for example, neuropsychological assessment of patients with brain lesions, for example. So it depends on, you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Ignazio. The next one is, how many of your undergraduates go on to do master's qualifications afterwards?
Actually, quite I wouldn't say the majority, but a good number of students go on to do MScs, masters, to specialize in a specific area. And for example, for some, for some careers, you do need a master to progress within a career. For example, I give you an example of forensic psychology. If you want to be a forensic psychologist, you will have to either do a master degree accredited by the British Psychological Society in forensic psychology to get on to the ladder and be, in the first year, and then become a forensic psychologist after, 2 more years of training. But you can't, enroll into that 2 years of training afterwards if you don't have an MSc in forensic psychology. So that's just an example. Sometimes it's compulsory to do an MSc if you want to go on to. But yeah, not probably the majority, but a good number of students go on to do an MSc.
Fantastic. So we'll take our final question on Zoom, and then what you can do, Ignacio, is answer these questions directly on Unibuddy. So if everyone could head to Unibuddy after. But the final question we'll take here on the Zoom session is, how do you assess your students?
Right. Specifically me in my module, or in general?
The psychology.
In psychology.
Of course. So, yeah, how do you assess?
Yeah, so the assessment or it could be of different kinds. So you could have, for example, for some modules, you could have, essays and multiple choice, assessments, for example. You can have either, that the essay counts for 100%, like in my module, or the assessment is combined by multiple choice question and essay, or you can have exams as well. So the exams will be like a timed exam where you get short questions that you need to answer. So it really depends on the module. For example, in your first year for research methods and statistics, you will have like a report, for example. You will have to sort of collect data, analyze data, write down a research report. So there are different ways to assess in different modules and in different years.
Fantastic, thank you. And with that, Ignacio, we will conclude the psychology session, because the next session will be sport, which will be starting in a minute. So I'd like to thank you for your presentation. I found that very informative, and I hope our visitors did as well. And I do apologize to our visitors if we didn't get across to answering your question. But what I will advise again is please go directly to the Unibuddy chat group, and you'll be able to chat to Ignacio, who's with us till 3:30 today.
Yes, I am there.
He's ready and willing to answer anything you have. Okay.
Yes, please ask away. All right.
Excellent. With that, I'll say goodbye to you, Ignacio, and wish you the best of luck for the rest of the afternoon.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.